Gentlemen, do I have a project for you? I was on eBay recently and came across a listing for 5 junk scrap rusty knives. They were doing it as an auction, but I put in an offer for 40 and they offered 45 back, and that's what I went for. So I got 5 old knives for $45, and boys, let me tell you, that is a very rusty, but I think very much savable, genuine Kabar. This is actually, I think, a newer one, but somebody's let that go to ruin. Oh, and then there was also this. This is just a nice knife. This is somebody's handmade hunting knife. You can tell the handles aren't even. The rivets are nowhere near spaced out very nicely. But this is just very cool. And this one's in decent shape. It's just got a little bit of rust around there and then up under the scales. But both of these knives have got me thinking. Give me just a second to reorient myself here. This K-bar especially is the big issue. Some of that rust is right up against that leather. And there's all sorts of ways I'm sure I could get into that. But I don't know. I think I'm willing to throw a little bit extra money at this and just have that problem go away. So I went down to O'Reilly's, and once I get myself figured out here. Also, when I came home, I found this bucket to do this. First thing I picked up. You love to see it. There we go. Perfect. So I got to thinking, what would be a safe way to not damage this leather, but get into all this rust? This K-bar is probably the worst of all the knives. That's some gnarly rust on there. Well, I got to thinking, and I remembered this stuff exists. Good old Evapo-Rust. Super safe rust remover. According to them, this only goes after the iron oxide or something in the iron oxide, so it shouldn't touch the leather. They come out and say plastic and rubber are safe. And then this is bone, I think? Not sure. Something like that. Maybe like a early plastic of some sort. So I figure, you know what? I'm going to give this Evapo-Rust a shot. I've never used this stuff before, but I think it might just be the ticket to getting rid of a lot of this rust and getting this old K-bar, or new K-bar, just poorly loved, back into the field. And certainly this knife. This knife will probably be done a lot longer before this one. So I, having no clue what I'm doing, am just going to get to it then. Gotta open the bottle first. If I was a good YouTuber, I would have pre-done this, but I'm not. I'm just a dude in the basement. Alright, and I don't know any other directions, and just dump this stuff in. About said something else there. And just get that in. Now, this Evapo-Rust, I will admit, was probably not the cheapest solution, but it will probably be the best. Certainly the best I can think of. This was about $31 after tax. Its listed price was $28. I remember that much. And it took about half a bottle to cover that knife up. Maybe even 2/3. Put a little in there extra. Just in case it gets any funny ideas about evaporating. So my big concern with this, after I've, of course, already put it in there, is potentially the Evapo-Rust having some reaction with the leather, or any chemicals in the leather. But at this point, my options are this or start pulling the knife apart, and I really don't want to do that. These K-bars are a pain, and it will never look right once it's done. So I'm just going to pray that it works and doesn't tear up the leather too much. I think what's more likely to happen is it's going to get deep down into that leather and sit there even after I take it out, and hopefully that'll not only clean any rust on the tang, but help prevent it in the future. What I'm going to do once this is done and I take it out is then take this and, take the Kabar and put that handle in some Neatsfoot oil I've got upstairs and let that soak in real good, and so it'll be a layer of chemical, 2 layers of chemicals, which I'm not huge on, but if that's what I've got to do to get this thing serviceable again, then that's what I've got to do. So I'm going to let this sit here for the K-bar probably overnight, maybe 2 nights. The other one, the little hunting knife, I may come back and get that in a few hours. It doesn't need much at all, but I'm going to leave it here and let it work its magic. A few more hours later, and the K-bar is still cooking, but I think that's pretty well done. All that needs now is a sharpening. There's a spot on the tang right there that I'm not hugely satisfied with, but I'm going to leave it. I'm going to call well enough alone. All I did was hit this with a little steel wool on the blade and on the spine, and really I don't think I needed to do that. All that did was make it shine a little bit more. So I probably won't actually do that for the K-bar. But then I put some of the, well, what else? Axe wax. I put that stuff on basically everything but my bread. But yeah, all this needs now, I think, is a sharpening and a sheath, and it'll be field ready. For the moment, I'm going to go put it on my shelf of curiosities, because, man, what a cool knife. I'll have to work on a sheath for that at some point, but yeah, like I said, really doesn't even need that much sharpening. Just maybe a good run on a ceramic stone and a strop, and I think that would be pert near ready. But now we wait for the hard job. It's been getting close to 24 hours, not quite. We're probably 4 hours off from being 24 hours, but I'm getting impatient. I want to get in there and see what this has done. So, moment of truth. Here's where I'm really concerned. Hey, okay, pretty good. Basically all the rust off of this side, all the rust off the guard pretty well. Didn't do much, if anything, to the leather. Maybe pulled some oil out of it or something. Right, give me a second. Let me grab a towel here. And then let me pull this behind the camera to clean it. So, one sec. We're nearly there. There's still some rough spots, a little piece in there. But this end's pretty well done. I've gone ahead and hit that with a little steel wool and a little axe wax just to protect it. But the pommel end's done. I'm going to put this in a jug so that I can continue having that work on the blade just a little bit while trying to let the actual leather dry, because the big next step is working on that leather handle. So this is my scientific blade cleaning unit, and I'm going to just take some of this and pour it in there. And that's another thing about Evapo-Rust. You can just keep using it until it turns black. At least that's what they say on the website. So I'm just going to use the same bath, but in a different bottle. And I think I'll have to pour a little more in. It was $30, so I do want to get every drop of it I can. Oop, speak of the devil. Alright. That looks suspiciously like some other liquid. I've got to be careful there. I did slice the bottle open like a dingleberry. That may not be the best vessel for this. Yeah, give me a minute. There we go. This'll work. That's just a vase I found. But I think we are just at the point, maybe needs just a hair more, where we're getting up into some of that thick rust, or pitting more now, and keeping it mostly out of the leather. I think there's a little bit of the leather that's under it here, but if that's wet, that's fine. That'll dry a lot faster than this whole handle being wet again. So I'm just going to let it sit there for a while and work its magic, or see if it'll keep working its magic. It may be at the extent of its ability to remove rust. It may not be able to get some of that harsh pitting where it kind of fizzes up. But we'll see. And then if nothing else, in a little while, I will come through, see if that leather's dry. And if it is, just going to paint a little more of that right there. It's just a little. Keep the metal that's not oiled here cleaning. I may just put more of that in there in a minute. Yeah. Hit that with Axe Wax, and the rest of this is just going to finish doing its thing. And we'll see where we're at. And once we're done cleaning the blade up, that means whatever this does, plus whatever extra work we have to do, then we'll move on to the handle. Well, you might notice the Evapo-Rust has been put away. That's because I think that's as good as we're going to get her. And you're looking at the worst side of it. This side doesn't look half bad. This side, it couldn't do anything about those pits. Those are deep pits in there with a little bit of the, I don't know what in the world you'd call that, rust crust that sort of forms on top of that, the real crumbly stuff. There's a piece of that that's welded into those pits. But those are, in fact, fairly deep pits. No getting rid of those. So, in terms of the metal, that is about as good as it's going to get. There's a couple of spots on the underside of the guard here that there's just no real good way to get in and deal with. And no real good way to show on camera either, frankly. Not a whole lot that can be done about that. Pommel, there's some stuff around the inside edge of that pommel too. Again, not a whole lot can be done about that. One real dark spot right there. It's the one thing I've noticed. So this knife, in terms of the metal cleaning, is done. Next, I'm going to go dunk it in some Neatsfoot oil and let that soak into this leather. She's still a little wet up here from where she was submerged in the Evapo-Rust. But next, we're going to let that handle soak in a bunch of Neatsfoot oil and then do just a little bit extra TLC. Once again, I should add, I finished the metal with the Axe Wax. I love that stuff. I'm going to have to get me a can or two or 3 or 4 of it. And then Evapo-Rust works pretty dang good, I would say, given the condition that knife was in. Borderline unsavable to now basically serviceable if I needed to. Not got much of an edge on it currently, but if I needed to, I could go out and use this right now. This back part probably could use as a knife. Dull up here, but we'll fix that eventually. Last guy who did it with a angle grinder or bench grinder one, and you can see how that turned out. Especially down here. I always hate when that happens. So if there's anything else that I'm going to fix on the metal ever, not necessarily even as part of this project, but maybe later on, it's going to be that there, and then maybe something about that big chunk of crustacean there. I don't know what else to call that. We're calling it crustacean. A big chunk of crustacean there. Yeah, you can kind of see it there. And then maybe something about, I guess, attempt at batoning or something up here. Overall, not bad. And she is a genuine, trying to get it in the light here, genuine Kabar. There we go. Kabar USMC. One of my grail knives. I've always wanted one of these. And this one's going to be not bad. The only other big issue is she is slightly bent. But because of the tang on these, the last thing I want to go do is trying to bend it back into shape, because that'll snap these rat tail tangs. These aren't meant to take a lot of force in this direction. So yeah. Next up, oil. So here we are, back on the old desk with another super specialized high-tech restoration vessel and 100% Neatsfoot oil that this I just got at the Tractor Supply. It was like $12. It's been a New York minute, so that might have changed. And we're literally just gonna take this and dump it straight into the thing, if I can not make a gigantic mess of it, which I'm not doing a fantastic job of doing so far, but I almost did it without making a mess. There we go. That'll do it. I've got some cleanup to do now, but other than that, we're just gonna let this sit. You can already see it's soaking in, starting to push air out of the leather in there. So while I've got you here, though, just want to go over a few things. The whole real point of this video has been sort of to test Rust-Oleum. When I was doing research on figuring out what to do with this knife, no one had said anything about what it would do with leather, and I just want to come out and say, at least in this instance, Rust-Oleum, or not Rust-Oleum, Evapo-Rust just didn't do anything at all, which is perfect. Exactly what I wanted. So I would 100% recommend having a thing of Evapo-Rust on hand, because it works pretty dang well at getting around stuff that you otherwise wouldn't want to use chemical or even sandpaper and steel wool around. Neither of these knives have come out 100% perfect, at no fault of the Evapo-Rust, I must add, but just as a result of the condition they were in. And I'm just going to leave them. I'm not going to worry too much about how fancy these look. This is going to probably darken that leather a bunch, and yeah, I don't know how I like that look, but it's also going to protect it. This is going to get down in there, soak into that leather, and just keep it fresh for, who knows, centuries maybe. And this Neatsfoot oil is also a dry run for some other projects. I have a old sheath that may have been this knife's original sheath that came in this lot. Another knife was in it, but it looks a lot like a plain Kabar sheath. So I might try and revive that with some of this Neatsfoot oil if this works real well. But then again, it's a little far gone. And then I have another, even more interesting knife I might use this oil for. A knife that is substantially older, because this is, I think, is a new production Kabar, so probably last 30 years. This other knife is well over 110 years old. The knife's in good shape, despite the story that's behind it. The only real issue is the leather in the handle. I'm not going to spoil the surprise too much, but just, it's a really cool woodscraft knife. That's the most I'll spoil. In decent shape, but it just needs some TLC in the leather handle. And if this works out well enough for this, I might use it for that. Although, given the historical value of that knife and its frankly potential monetary value, I'm a little hesitant to do anything to it. But that's on the table now, so we will just have to see. But I'm gonna go ahead and cut it and let this soak in and do its thing, and then I'll jump back after I've also cleaned up the mess down here, and we'll see how this did. So here we are. All I ended up doing was letting that soak about 2 or 3 hours, maybe 4. Let it dry for probably another 2, then hit it with some axe wax and buffed it out with a brush. Don't know how much extra good the axe wax did, since the Neatsfoot oil was already pretty deep in there. And I don't know exactly how much good the brushing did. But there you are. That's how it turned out in the end. This side is a little rougher, the leather, than this side, which is a little more slick. But that goes for the blade basically as well. This side's worse than this side. All in all, both of these knives are now very nice. This one's really, really nice. This one's a good workhorse that'll be back in the field. Both of these knives now just need a good edge and a sheath. But I think for now, we'll call her there. Thank you for watching. Keep an eye out. There will be more soon, I promise. Gingy out. I completely forgot to mention, I actually knocked that bit of crustacean sort of rust off of that pit right there. I just poked at it with a utility knife until it popped free. So, not bad at all.